Welcome to Shannons Club TV, where we look back on memorable cars from Australian motoring history.
In each episode, we uncover the defining points of our feature car and road test an owner's well-maintained example. We'll also get the latest market news from the Shannons auctions team.
But first, let's look at the tiny British sedans which exude the austerity of post-war Britain, the Austin A30 and A35.
The A30, star of the 1951 Earls Court show, was Austin's first unitary construction car. Announced as the new Austin 7, it was essentially a downsized Austin A40 in both style and mechanicals. The A30 used a smaller 803cc version of the A40's modern A-series engine, developing all of 28 horsepower, hence A30. In 1952, Britain's two largest automotive companies merged to create the British Motor Corporation. This move soon ushered in an era of badge engineering to rival that of General Motors. But at the entry level to the BMC range, the Morris Minor and Austin A30 competed usefully. Alec Issigonis's radical Minor, with its excellent chassis, was constrained by a chronically underpowered side valve engine. So each car had strengths and weaknesses. Mark, with just 28 brake horsepower, count them, the A30 hardly looked like a prospective racer, even in 1951.
No, I mean, those numbers look very small in isolation. But I guess what you have to do is keep it comparative to what else was available in the 1950s British marketplace. You know, cars like the Morris Minor, Ford's 100E range, the standard 8 and 10. I mean, these sort of cars, when you compare them that way, it doesn't look quite so anemic. And keep in mind, these cars attracted their fair share of successful drivers, which I'll get to a bit later on.
They did, absolutely. The A30 proceeded to outsell its cousin, and the new 7 appellation was ditched. The Minor also acquired the 803cc engine, removing the Austin's major advantage. For many, though, the A30 seemed more modern, with its faired-in guards and scaled-down big car looks. There was room for 4 adults, and the instruments were mounted centrally so that everyone could applaud the little Austin's performance. In 1956, my English father bought his 1955 example. Even at 6, I wondered why he hadn't chosen a Morris Minor or, even better, a Fiat 1100 or, more perversely, a Citroën 2CV. But I guess his leaning was more towards Austin than Morris, in the way Aussie motorists were already choosing between Holdens and Fords. This car was so basic. Post-war austerity on wheels. Unsynchronised first gear, fixed rear windows, front windows you pushed up and down. Even in 1956, the A30 seemed pitiably slow, cruising at 45 with a top speed of 62, having been conceived in the days before Britain had motorways. The A35 launched in September 56, got the Minor 1000's 948cc engine and dramatically improved performance. Interestingly, an A30 was Jackie Stewart's first car. No doubt he drove his much faster than Dad drove ours. Mark, some other famous drivers started their careers in Austin A30s, including Bathurst champion Peter Brock.
He sure did, and I don't think anyone was ready for his unique interpretation of a racing A30. The modest speeds, mechanical simplicity and low cost of the Austin A30 and its slightly faster A35 successor made BMC's diminutive sedans popular with British touring car racers in the 1950s, including future World Drivers' champion Graham Hill. They were also popular with young drivers on the street, which auspiciously included the Flying Scot, Jackie Stewart. At just 17, he'd saved enough money to buy a new spruce green A30, complete with Stewart tartan seat covers. He later progressed to an A35, in which he regularly covered more than a mile a minute on Scotland's back roads, developing the sublime driving skills of another future world champion. Not surprisingly, the A30 was also popular on Australian tracks, providing a starting point for numerous local stars, including Bathurst winner Brian Sampson, BMC and later Alpha specialist Brian Foley, and one of Australia's finest touring car racing exports, Brian Muir, to name a few. John, they now have a one-make series for A35s in the UK, which is proving very popular in historic racing. So it just goes to show that anything can end up on the racetrack, can't it?
Well, the A35 actually had a lot more performance than the A30, but you'd have to say the A30 would just about be almost the world's most improbable race car, except perhaps the Citroën 2CV or something. But
yeah, it
is remarkable, the ingenuity that driver engineers will bring to their cars, and nowhere better exemplified than that Hurstbridge Special.
Yeah, and the fact that the A30 and the A35 are so cheap and simple, that in itself always makes them attractive to race drivers.
Absolutely.
Doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. The most famous, some would say infamous, Austin A30 seen on Australian tracks was the home-built sports sedan built and raced by future 9 times Bathurst winner Peter Brock. In this ungainly device, the young, cash-strapped rookie soon made his raw talent abundantly clear. The A30 was a rough old thing, built in a chook shed on a dirt floor. In place of the original 4 was a 179 Holden 6, shoehorned into the small engine bay by cutting a big hole in the firewall. With its wide track suspension and crude wheel flares, the little beast was almost as wide as it was long, resulting in very twitchy handling. However, for such a smooth and gifted driver, this knife-edge response could be used to good effect. Its staggering record of 102 race wins from 65 meetings clearly owed more to the unique talent of its driver than anything else. A factory drive with Holden and a stellar career were inevitable, but it all started with the humble Austin A30. Remember, you can build your own virtual garage on the Shannons Club website.
G'day, my name's Glenn. This is my 1957 Austin A35, which is quite a rare car in Australia. It was in fairly run-down condition when we bought it, painted all but worn through. Mechanicals needed tidying up. It had been well serviced, but certainly needed a lot of TLC. We've had it in the family since 1981, so quite a popular car and quite a popular specification in their time and quite well proven. The fact that it's got a good heater in it. They were only an optional extra back in the day, but the Poms were very good at building heaters for their cars, being in such a cold climate, so this is no exception. Because they're just a little bit better mechanically than the Austin A30, a lot of them that were here in Australia were actually used in motorsport back in the 60s and into the 70s. So 948cc 4-cylinder engine, 4-speed manual gearbox. Also, it is quite a joy to drive. We do enjoy it, little English car. It handles quite well for what it is. It's no high-speed car in its standard form. It drives very well. It's an enthusiastic car to drive. It always wants to get going. An ideal car for around town, but it's a pleasant ride and a pleasant thing to drive. Once we actually got it on the road and were using it, which we did quite a lot and still do, me often being in the front passenger seat, if it was just Dad and I would get to use the indicator switch, which on these is in the centre of the dash rather than on the right-hand side. So as a young bloke, I thought that was pretty good. I do appreciate what Shannons do for the classic car movement in general. I think it is fantastic. Our future plans with the car is to continue to keep it as it is and to enjoy it as it is, as a club car and as a hobby car, driving on the weekends, that kind of thing.
Shannons National Auctions Manager Chris Borrabon is here to bring us all the latest on the Austin A30 and A35. Welcome, mate.
Hey guys, how are you? How John?
Chris, g'day. The Austin A30, can we say that has become a collectible car yet?
Maybe in the club scene. We're not really seeing it out in the marketplace much, and I can't tell you the last time I saw them on the road. So we're not seeing too many come up, and definitely through the auctions we're not seeing many come up. I mean, for me, I think, if I think about A30, the most famous one is obviously Peter Brock running around in an A30. That's
highly modified.
It's interesting because this was happened the A30 and the Morris Minor both came out before BMC was formed in 1953, and then they had these two little cars competing against each other.
Under the same umbrella.
Under the same umbrella.
Yeah.
And really, in lots of ways, the Morris Minor was the better car. But the Austin A30 was very popular because it had the sort of scaled down big car looks.
I thought that, the style now, when you look at it,
it's just laughable, really. Isn't it?
It's
like,
incredible. I mean, an A30 is less than 3.5 metres long.
you feel you could pick it up.
Yeah, you could almost pick it up and put it under your arm. And the styling is just so, exaggerated when you look at it today.
What's interesting, they took the Austin A40 basically and scaled it down. Even used a scaled down version of the A series engine.
Yeah. Because of that, the overt styling, the little size, I thought, in terms of collectability, the A30 and the larger engine A35 would be up there.
It's a bit of a caricature in lots of ways, and yet it's got some quite colourful history. I think Jackie Stewart, for example,
a lot of racing
a
drivers.
mile a minute
Started their career.
Scotland,
Well, that's right. I mean, you do see a few on racetracks in the UK. They seem to be quite popular.
And very susceptible to tuning, I would imagine, that engine.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, there's got to be a bit more that can be done to those 803cc motors, I would have thought.
Well, I mean, we're talking about the A30 had the 803, then the A35 had the larger, the 948.
Well, that's effectively the Morris Minor 1000 engine.
So would that make the A35 more desirable from a collective viewpoint, or?
Not necessarily. I think there's following in both, and most of it I think is really in the club scene. But outside of a club scene, as I mentioned, we see it, a big following in the UK on racetracks there. Look, where would you find one? Probably best to talk to the Austin Club. I think most of them are probably tightly held in there. Yep.
And they made 2 doors and 4 doors, of course.
That's right.
Any preference
and they
there?
had vans in the UK.
And
That's
vans,
right, yeah. Look, I would have thought the 2-door variant is probably the one.
They always tend to be, don't
Probably a little bit more collectability, but I'll probably speak to your Austin Club, in any state of Australia and see what's around, really.
See what's around.
Any car of that era, in good condition, has got a certain amount of interest value, hasn't it? And is collectible to an extent.
Right. To an extent, that's right.
Even a Hellman Minx.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
No problem at all, guys.
And remember, you can get all the latest Shannons auctions news on the Shannons Club website. For your own race image of these little Austins, visit AutoPic's incredible motorsport photo archive. John, we always talk about, particularly in that early Australian post-war car manufacturing era, we were getting a lot of British products here. And a lot of them weren't really suited to Australia's unique conditions. Do you think these cars sort of fit into that bracket?
I do, and I think it also serves to show just what a wonderful car the first Holden was in that time, when it could actually, cruise at 65 or 70 miles an hour. We still had the Austin A30 when my parents bought a holiday house, got a holiday house built in Lorne, and I just can't imagine what it would have been like driving it to Lorne at a cruising speed of maybe 45 miles an hour.
It's unimaginable.
It's 2/3 of the speed a Holden could cruise at. And you've got to realise that the circumstances under which these cars were conceived. Britain didn't get its first motorway until
late
1959 or something like that.
Yeah.
And people just didn't use those sorts of speeds. I can remember one road test, Armstrong Sidleys, that happened, talking about 45 miles an hour was the kind of speed people drove in Britain. So they really weren't suitable for Australia's vast distances.
And Holden certainly pounced on that with the design of their cars, because they really were designed for Australian conditions.
And the big contrast between the Peugeot 203 and the Austin A40. They had similar kind of overall performance, but the 203 had a very tall gearing for long distance cruising, whereas the A40 was another car screaming its head off at 50 miles an hour. So that was largely a British car problem.
Yeah, British post-war austerity at its best.
Absolutely.
We hope you've enjoyed reflecting on the memorable A30 and A35. We hope you can join us next time for Shannons Club TV. Bye for now.